Good morning. It's wonderful to be back in Berkeley. I enjoy this weather because if you didn't notice that, I'm visiting from far away from a dry and hot place, and so it rains in Abu Dhabi about once a year. And if it rains, then it rains. It's just like a Pacific storm, and then we get a lot of flooding. But just before lunch, I'm happy to have the chance to give you somewhat a more high-level overview talk about ADIA Lab in Abu Dhabi. And so maybe I should first say something in case you don't know. Abu Dhabi is part of the United Arab Emirates. That is, we're not in Saudi Arabia. I always have to say this. It's just like I get approached by so many people, and this is just like if I would say I'm from Toronto, and then they ask me about Trump. So this is kind of the equivalent. Just to make clear. And then the other thing is Abu Dhabi is not Dubai. And I always say Dubai is Las Vegas. It's sort of a mixture of Las Vegas and LA. And I would say Abu Dhabi is more, I would compare it to a mixture of Washington and Washington, D.C. and Seattle. That is very much a technology-focused, low-key place focused on government, but it's so anyway, this is my short tourist guide. The reason I say this is because I'd like to use my 15 minutes here, not going too much into technical detail, but hopefully engage in a conversation. And because one of the missions that ADIA Lab has is not just to do basic research in computational and data science, but also helping Abu Dhabi to be more integrated into the international research community, and to do this through education and partnerships. I also like to point out we are not an AI lab, and I make this point because I left here just when ChatGPT hit and before the AI wave started. And so I keep on saying ADIA Lab, and this is sort of my long-term vision, and it is a computational and data science lab, and we're focusing on computer science, applied math, and statistics, and not on the flavor of the decade. And so you know what the flavor of the decade is. This has to be around, we have to be around for at least another 20 or so years. Anyway, so what is the lab doing? It was established in December 22. I've been there since then, and we are working on a number of issues and topics that are connected to what is discussed here. And maybe I should say as another point of information, ADIA, the parent company, is a very large sovereign wealth fund which has a lot of assets under management, but we are kept intentionally at arm's length and independent. So you can talk to me about funding for your startup company, but I'm not connected to the private equity people. I can introduce you, but I'm not involved in making funding decisions. So what we're doing is research, fellowship, competitions, and education. I'd just like to talk about these things a little bit in more detail. In research, we're collaborating with partners internationally, in particular, research institutions, universities, labs, but also companies. And we give research grants, but we're not a funding agency. I should also point that out. The focus of our research grants is, again, building a network and bringing people together, in particular, connecting internationally well-established researchers with colleagues in Abu Dhabi at the local universities. And of course, we're doing quite a bit of research ourselves. In education, we have seminars, summer schools, internships, fellowships. I can talk about more. And we're doing the competitions. So what are we doing? So even though our parent organization is a large financial sovereign wealth fund, we're not necessarily doing financial work. So unlike Bridgewater, we're not doing this. And so therefore, it's interesting that I have an advisory board, a very distinguished advisory board, and the advisory board told us these are the areas to focus on. So it's climate science, health science, material science, that is something starting up new. And then in all these areas, computational tools and using large-scale computation and computational algorithms to solve problems of scale and problems of scientific importance. And then I think the one which connects us most to our sponsoring company, to ADIA, is the digital economy. This is, in a sense, connecting some economic modeling to high-performance computing and using large data for doing large-scale economic models, but also looking at some themes that are discussed here, that is doing distributed computing, using the blockchain, using also central bank digital currencies are topics that are of great interest, in particular for computational requirements there. And then I'd like to list trustworthy AI and supercomputing as cross-cutting areas that work in these two areas will cut across the three applications areas. And I spent, before I went to Abu Dhabi, my last 25 years up here at Berkeley Lab. And so I've always been driven by work that is called mission-focused computational work. That is, we want to solve a problem in some of the application area, but we're using the computational tools that are coming out of basic math and computer science. So in climate science, there are 4 thrust areas: data creation and platforms, physics-based and hybrid AI physics-based models, climate adaptation and resilience, and ethical climate AI and governance. And I'd like to just, as an example, mention one of the corporations that we just started, led by Salman Khan at the Mohammed bin Zayed University of AI. And this is a multimodal AI foundation model that we're trying to build to bring satellite data, then climate data, and things for the region that we're in terms of looking not just about climate, but also about water and water production. And this is, I would like to use this as typical that in this collaboration, we're working with partners, collaborators, UC San Diego, Microsoft AI for Good Lab, and Inception, which is a local company in Abu Dhabi under the G42 parent. In health sciences, similar, we have 4 thrust areas: data and tools, AI for prevention and management of cardiovascular diseases, multimodal AI, and AI and computational tools for health span. We ran a competition and had a large number of participants worldwide, received lots of proposals, and here are again 3 sample grants. And again, as I would like to point out, an important one is the collaboration. So I'd like to point out Iran Siegel's project, because the UAE have some very unique data sets in terms of the Emirati Genome Project is a large population sequence project that has about 500,000 individual sequence. And there's also a data set of medical data, the Malafi data, that is more than 30 years of health records, insurance records, patient records. And so Iran's project is interesting because he also has an appointment in Israel, and there's some similar Israeli data sets. And so we're trying to bring these data sets together and work on this project. And this is another example of an international collaboration. In digital economy, and this is not as well developed, this is something that will be announced next soon when we're doing, and this is why it's important here. There are these areas that are interested in digital transformation, in networks and AI platforms. So some of the work that was discussed here in terms of blockchain and federated learning, they fit exactly into this area. And so I'd like to use my time here to advertise that we will have a call for proposals out shortly for projects in 2026. I can share this presentation with you so you can look some of the topics, but this is pretty much will be the topics in our call for proposals. And so here's a sample of our national and international collaborations, and Simons Institute is listed. Many others are listed here as well. And this is one important role for me, is to make these connections and make sure that we will fill the network with energy and with collaborations. So I would like to just say one word about competitions. So ADIA Lab is also hosting international competition. I would like to use this structural breakdown competition as a good example. That is a competition that was organized in 2025. So you're probably familiar with Kaggle. So this is a Kaggle-like competition. Our partner here is a French company called Crunch.io, a distributed anonymous organization. And the interesting thing is, and that's why I'd like to mention this here, is that there were 8,000 of emails of interest submitted. We had 2,000 participants. And the question was on some data sets that we distributed to find a structural breakdown. And this is if you have a process like here, which looks like the blue line, which follows a certain regular way. And then there's a fundamental in the process is changing, and this means that you get the green line. And so you would like to have a data set and go back in the data set and find the structural break. And the structural break is something of interest in climate science, because you want to see if some phenomena is actually going into some different regime. It's important in health. You want to know if a patient that you're monitoring suddenly is getting worse because there's structural break. And of course, it's also of interest to ADIA in terms of finance. If you look at some stock prices, if you see some fundamental difference in the performance. And so we had a $100,000 prize pool. And it's intriguing that a team from Brazil, whom we had never heard of, won the first prize, had the best result. And so these were 4 researchers, only one of them university affiliate. The others were sort of people in their garage or basement or whatever you do in Brazil, who will share that prize. Anyway, and then there's education. I just glanced through this. Summer school is something we are organizing. Our symposium is a big annual event. So next year will happen, the past one just happened a couple of weeks ago. We have about 800 people, and this I see is a great success because we had 800 people in person. And the more people I can bring to Abu Dhabi, the better it is. And so I'd like you to put this on your calendar for next year, probably second half of October 26, which is a great time to visit because it's getting colder.
What's colder?
In centigrades, between 25 and 30. Thank you. And this is for